welcome back. So
Let's get this over
you
with.
seem still upset.
I thought he left already.
that's the thing. I switched to my completed save file for this one.
All right.
You know, I'll admit
Pack of artworks.
at this point, honestly, what more is there for us to even say about this game that hasn't already been said? I mean, yes, there's other stuff to see, but gosh dang.
What is this? A character palette swap series for Connor in a fighting game?
There you go. There you go. But this is how the Connor originally looked like in the concept stuff.
He looks like Daniel Radcliffe in that shot.
Yeah, a bit actually. He does. There you go. Here's
How much?
Here's
Wait,
Daniel's original.
I wonder, what if originally they tried to get Daniel Radcliffe?
Nah.
I doubt it.
Damn, Harry really went downhill after that.
The only real major actor that is in this game is Lance, the guy
Clancy
who played
Brown.
the android from Aliens. Well, also Clancy Brown. Truth be told.
Okay. But Tio, what I'm saying is, like, maybe they tried to get Daniel Radcliffe, because I would not be surprised if David Cage tried.
There you go, Jump. Here's an interesting thing.
Wait, hold on.
Of course, Alice was supposed to be African.
Hold on.
Originally.
What's Riley from Walking Dead doing here?
Basically, Jova, Alice was originally supposed to be an African American. So that we can show. And here's Kara's original design. She looks like Olivia Wilde.
For that extra touch of the emotional manipulation for the player.
Seriously, look at that whip. She looks so much like Olivia Wilde in this. Like seriously, what the fuck?
She looks like if you combined her characters from House and Tron Legacy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Go figure.
Weird. So yeah, basically Alice was originally supposed to be an African-American girl for the sake of shoving the message even further into your throat. But I guess someone at Quantic Dream thought, David, why don't you just make her white? Just for the sake of, trying to be like 1% more subtle.
I think, therefore I am.
I'm also guessing...
Yeah, originally instead of saying I am alive, it originally said I think, therefore I am. My guess is, again, someone thought, David, this is a bit pretentious to have this here. So,
honestly, it would have made more sense if you asked
As if I am alive is any less pretentious.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have in terms of theories. You come up with yours then.
Pedro. Imagine this. Someone whose job it is to try and keep David Cage from sounding too pretentious in his writing. That's like the equivalent of the aide of Trump who tries to keep him from tweeting.
What the fuck is this concept artist for, Marcus? It was so fabulous in that pose. But no, what I was saying
Hank
is...
was originally...
Wait,
sorry.
Wow, the cop...
Wow, he looked very different.
Still scruffy.
Here you go. Never mind, That was another cop. This is actually Hank's cop.
One of those designs looked like this.
Was that other cop supposed to be the asshole cop, I wonder?
No.
It was the forensic one, I think. The one you meet him occasionally on the crime scenes.
He's not important.
One of those earlier designs looked a lot like Nick Frost from Hot Fuzz, but put on a fuck ton more weight.
Alright, here's the artwork for the environments.
Also, what's up with all these character portraits that showcase them as palette swaps for a fighting game, It really looked like...
I guess they just had trouble deciding what colors they wanted to use.
For PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale 2.
There you go, here's the concept art for the android's skeleton body.
Oh. But anyway, what I was saying before is that I'm guessing they made Alice, blonde and Caucasian in appearance, for the sake of making more quote-unquote believable, which would have been Todd's biological daughter, in a sense of perpetrating the lie. Never mind the fact that, as we pointed out, they barely kept the secret intact anyway, so why did they even try?
Yeah.
Why does Marcus look like a footballer?
That concept art showcased you how the beams could be connected.
Interesting.
But I also
Spencer Mansion.
Welcome to Resident Evil.
I know, right? It pretty much
also,
is.
I have good news for you, Pedro, because the polar bear.
Which one though, Jova? 1 or 7?
1.
Any.
Well, okay, anyone that has a creepy mansion in it.
Code Veronica.
Yes, too.
No, I actually have good news. I actually know how you can decrypt the diary, actually.
Oh, really? How do you do it then?
Basically, you have to have captured the guy who was, escaping from that apartment, because the diary it says. Basically, you need to use
I've actually done that before.
You actually, actually me bring the quote in the meantime because it's on the Detroit Wiki. But hold on. But basically, what it is.
Originally, Rose and her son were supposed to be white.
Of course.
Are we sure that this is Rose and her son?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Same clothes.
Notice their house and even.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, okay. Fair point. I guess I was wondering, how do we know all of these characters? Now, granted, some are obvious, from looks and everything, but it's weird that they don't have sort of like a description or bio for some of these. It's kind of a shame.
There we go. In Last Chance Connor, if Connor chased Rupert and Rupert jumped to destroy himself, his diary will be placed in the Detroit Police Department Central Station evidence room as evidence. Connor can reactivate Rupert and ask him for the key to reading his encrypted diary. Doing so will basically allow Connor to locate Jericho through that.
Wait, and he'll actually give him the key right there and then? I thought he, would recognize that he's not someone he can trust.
Yeah, exactly what Jova said too. Silly me, I thought Rupert would refuse to do so. So my thought was, okay, I can just imitate Marcus's voice and fool the other guy because that's such a much more intuitive way to go about it,
But apparently,
anyway, Jova, I want you to. All right, anyway, Jova, I want you to read the composer descriptions for the soundtracks, since you probably would be a lot more understanding of the terms they're mentioning here. Go ahead.
Cool.
To save the fish or not, this tells you everything about this track. This scene sets the tone of who Connor is and what his journey can be. Being one of the first tracks I wrote, I aim to introduce and capture as many thematic ideas as possible. You can hear Connor's thoughts, movements, curiosities, as well as emotional changes through the arc of a scene and the music. Some of the colors you hear...
You can hear are.
Of course. The Connor guitar, which is a 24-fret guitar-like custom instrument, created to replicate the inner workings of an Android, vintage and very, very old Moog synthesizers, as well as a detuned unplugged electric violin. You hear scratches, ticking movements, and rubs, which, with all, creates the sound of who Connor is, during gameplay when the player makes any decision. The track evolves and gets manipulated to reflect these choices.
Props for experimentation, I guess.
So, Joe, what do you think of the sound design idea?
I mean, it's experimentative, but I'm gonna be quite honest, the music here didn't really strike a chord with me.
Honestly, I kind of like the tracks that I played during the Connor's chapter.
Yeah. After reaching the in-depth script that David Cage provided me for the project, the questions that continually I came back to was, who is Connor? What does he represent? And is Connor a true android? These questions and philosophies were the backings of the Connor Suite's exploration. The suite represents all the emotional journeys, the mission, the doubts, the realizations, and the disappointments Connor can have. The tools and the colors that helped me capture the sound of Connor was many vintage synthesizers, rare analog and modular synthesizers, as well as non-traditional methods of playing traditional orchestral instruments. The first sound you hear is an old vintage Moog synthesizer, which,
Yeah, we already know this, basically. He's basically repeating himself at this point.
Gotta love
I'll read this one.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on, never mind. You read this one.
It's always exciting to score a trailer for the project you're working on. It's a rare opportunity. I wanted to make sure we allow Marcus's fame to shine through in the trailer for free. I don't know if this is what John Paisano sounds like.
The composer of Marvel Spider-Man, for those who don't know. Go
because it's really the first time that future players are connected with him. It's a perfect platform to give everyone a preview of what struggles Marcus and the player through Marcus are going to experience together. The goal of this track was that the music amplifies the struggle while generating interest in Marcus's uncertain future.
So they managed to net Marvel Spider-Man's composer into this.
To his credit, Marcus's music is the one that I like the most. So
ain't that ironic? He's the character you like the least.
Yeah.
Games like Detroit Become Human are deeply inspiring due to their close ties to cinema. I often found myself writing the score of this game, much as I would be the feature film. We Are People. It's a track which was rooted in creating a cinematic experience for players. The subject of prejudice and slavery is complicated and dark, but the representation of hope and freedom is so strongly rooted in Marcus's actions, it needed both light and darkness.
Yeah, whatever. Theo, you can read Phillips.
Sure. Much of Kara's adventure happens outside, and many of her challenges are set against the elements. This game is so cinematic. There are many times gazing at the screen I forgot whether rain and snow started as line of code, much like Kara's, whatever. I wanted to compose the cold and exposure into the music, but at the same time try to find a way to represent the idea of an internal mental warmth. Even the beginning of love that could mimic a person cope with anything from the outside. I wanted to contrast a sense of a bitter cold with a sense of affection and memory. There's an orchestral chorus that returns that is meant to feel like the music is breathing in and out from one chord to the next. Hidden in all those these layers, Karen, these themes are intertwined in buried melodies.
Exactly. And here is something that he brings up.
The chase. This music for a chase sequence in which everything can come to an abrupt and violent finish. As a composer, my job is to describe as much as possible, really is to letting the player originate their own reactive feelings, to build their own emotions from fear to ecstasy. That can mean describing everything. Whatever the environment at the moment of a character's physical state, their mental state, even things that are out of a shot that are about to happen, there's a lot to choose from. In this queue, Kara is in real danger, so her theme is just reduced to a violent shudder. The tune itself is violently shaking with fear. Orchestral instruments are highly distorted, and even the percussion tracks are constructed from my string players hitting the instrument with their bows. A jig-heavy riff builds up, over which Kara's orchestral theme grows out of 40 separate electric things, before descending into maelstrom chaos. So the cello I'm playing to make the electric solos over the top is actually 250 years old.
Yeah, he used the cello that's 250 years old. I wasn't even aware that instruments like that could still work after so many years.
You'd be surprised.
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technique to the right type of wood is insane. On
there you go, Jova. That poor cello has been dusted off specifically for a David Cage game.
You know, there are so many other titles you could have used it for, like, I don't know. You could have used it for, like, a Xenoblade game. You could have used it for, I don't know, a Kingdom Hearts game. Or, heck, even Smash Brothers would have been a better use of it.
To be fair, the music in God of War is already amazing on its own anyway.
Well, that's what I mean. Just one might as well use an instrument, of this caliber.
Anyway, the rest is all licensed music, so it doesn't.
No. What I wanted to say was, I love that the other composer, but we giggle, started like after I had to read multiple times the script that David Cage gave me. Then my major question still was who is Connor. Sorry.
First behind the scenes video, discovering Detroit.
Also, take a shot every time the composer's message mentions electricity.
David and Guillaume got back in touch about making Detroit. I wasn't terrible.
And you go footage from the original reveal trailer.
Yes.
Intense. So
again, hey Kara, the person who's kind of responsible for this project even being a thing, and she feels like a bit player in the own story. Yeah. AKA Alice from Twilight.
And whether or not she had changed.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to say that with Detroit I've had the opportunity to see Kara grow so much more than ever.
Really?
That's a good one. Again, Kara's a bit player in this story at best.
Well, PR in terms shield the product.
She starts out essentially how she does.
It's weird though. She is like, one of the bigger actor names that they got for this title, and yet her character has such a minor
Honestly,
role.
Java, I forgot if I mentioned already, it really feels as if there were some rewrites here and there.
Like maybe they figured out, oh god, we gotta pay her more by the hour. We'll just have to downgrade her role.
Emotions change, and how much emotion is based on things like empathy. And
Emotions.
experience. And so having, as much material as I got with David to have this huge, nuanced arc.
Again, I'll give props to the actors. Let's not forget, the actors in this are in a motion capture theater where they're not even using the actual items, and yet they still have to act them out just well.
Oh, there you go, Jesse Williams. This is the guy that David Cage tried to use as an excuse with the "I have a black friend" excuse that he used.
Poor Jesse Williams.
If you're someone who uses that excuse, it doesn't work.
Okay, it's it's one thing to use that excuse, but I feel sorry for the people who are the subject of that excuse.
There's no
It's
Yeah,
okay.
that's a good point.
Oh look, it's Minka Kelly, the girl the woman who plays North. Like
Okay.
she got the short change as far as I'm concerned, because she has the worst character in the entire game as far
Yeah,
as
I
I'm
was gonna
concerned.
say.
And that's saying
I thought you
something.
were gonna say.
Kind of
I thought you were gonna say she
acting
plays
kid.
Dick.
Oh, but
Oh,
Brian
hey,
Deckard,
there he
you
is,
know,
the unsung hero, Brian Deckard.
Yes.
Oh, and Clancy
The-
Brown.
This
Well, yeah.
poor man. No, that's the thing. This poor man has been promoting the game better than Quantic Dream themselves by being genuinely nice and always willing to talk to fans.
What else has he done?
This is kind of his
nothing that
first.
I'm not familiar with him.
He's done some
Shirley.
TV
Gotta
shows.
love how we had to shave Clancy Brown, but in game they made him a beard still, because
know,
Clancy
right?
Brown is recognizable for his beard.
Because they had to put the mocap thingies in his face.
I
so.
know.
Oh, there you go, Pedro. Proof that David Cage was somehow creatively involved in Connor's scenes.
Yeah.
Well, no, well, of course he was. Dwebs. He's the sole director of the game. Obviously, he's going to direct the scenes, even if he didn't write all.
And it's always inspiring to work
I mean, just because he didn't write,
It's like-
being involved doesn't just
Oh,
involve
very
writing.
good.
Hey,
Lance,
there he is.
Henriksen.
Okay, I'm just gonna say this right now. It was such a missed opportunity to not have Lance Henriksen. You know, the
As an
robot.
android.
I mean, seriously, he's been playing robots his entire career. How do you not have him as an android?
True. Remember, Dwebs, this game had co-writers, not co-directors.
Java,
David was the only director.
it's subverting your expectation. You think that it will play an android, but no, it's a new one.
Maybe we
It's,
should have also gotten, Dwebs, maybe we should have also gotten co-directors, because as we've already established, David Cage sucks balls.
that's
Yay,
fine.
Clancy Brown!
Hi, Clancy Brown.
And yes, he also has to swallow his dignity and try to sell this thing to us.
I mean, okay. It's one thing for Clancy Brown because he's been in a lot of big name stuff already, but poor Brian Deckard, as far as I know, this is
He was
his
in
first
Thor
big role.
Ragnarok, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Basically, Dreams, he plays two people in the MCU. One is that guy who double crosses the Punisher, and the other is a giant demonic fiery god being. Moving on to reincarnation.
Plus, he was also the best thing about. He was also the best thing in Highlander.
What?
Yeah,
No doubt.
the villain, the Krogan.
He's also Long Bang in Avatar, Neo Cortex, and a few Crash Bandicoot games. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Especially Lex Luthor. But yeah, it's like, for Brian Deckard, as far as I know, this is his first big role. I really hope that the guy does get other work because of all the things
Same.
to show that he deserves it, it's this game that shows it. I mean, the fact that you managed to portray a good character in a David Cage script, that earns you some major kudos. Not that the other actors aren't trying. Again, I will give Jesse.
Oh no! That's the thing, Jova. The only David Cage game that I would say has terrible acting in general is Heavy Rain. Really, I mean, even Indigo Prophecy, I would argue has better acting than the Heavy Rain. To be honest.
Oh hey, there's the woman who plays Rose.
Well, look at that.
There shall be.
That's Scott Shelby's actor, who I'm guessing his scene was cut.
Or was used only for promotional material.
Oh, there's David.
Hey, David Gassman.
AKA one of the most dumbest cops I've ever seen.
Well, Webs, it wouldn't be a David Cage game without David Gassman, now would it?
Was he an Omnicron?
Yes.
Yes. Well,
Wow.
actually,
There's gonna be
no, I don't think he would. No, it started with Indigo Prophecy.
Going to be Fahrenheit.
I would have to. I actually prefer the name Indigo Prophecy, to be honest. It's one of those rare cases where I think America picked a better title than Europe. To be
I mean,
honest.
could you imagine talking about that title to someone who doesn't know? I got this thing called Fahrenheit.
Same thing,
You have to understand, if it was made around the time the Disaster Report games were made, so we were going through that craze.
Same thing with Layton 2. I prefer Diabolical Box over Pandora's Box because the box in that game has nothing to do with the actual Pandora's Box. So
I don't think there's been a game recently. I don't think there's been a major game recently that's had a different name elsewhere now. So
Well,
I think maybe
for
they're
my
starting to come out of
country-
it.
Anyway, let's talk about the
boy,
characters.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
meet
yeah,
the
let's just
quote-unquote
look at the
characters.
Hey, this game has some characters.
It does. It has some, though. Here's the problem.
It has Hank and
This is
Connor
my story.
and
Hold on, Shiroi. Her name is Kara, and guess what, Shiroi?
This
Hold on, wait for it.
is our story.
Oh.
Boo!
This is our
Oh my
story.
god, you know, I just realized they got rid of the line, "Where's your humanity?" God dang it, I was looking forward to that too.
To be fair, Jova, we never actually confirmed that was an actually leaked page from the script. For all we know, it was
no,
fake.
no. I'm actually, Pedro, they did confirm later that was from the script.
Well, maybe when it got public, David did a last-minute rewrite or something. I don't know.
Wow, a moment of humility from Mr. Cage himself.
Either that or maybe Sony suggested it.
Well, they're not suggesting anything to it anymore now, so...
No. On this point on, Quantic Dream will be remember, they've partnered up with a Chinese company of all things.
Maybe now they'll actually have to pay mind to their budget better.
I doubt that, Jova.
We used a net for a mocap blanket. I know that they used a way to use props for the objects, but really, you couldn't have used a proper blanket to represent that.
Well, to be fair, as long as it comes across well in the game itself, does it really matter?
It is weird because they actually do have other blankets that we see them use, so, huh.
Honestly, this is just the mocap stuff. Like as far as it comes across well in the game itself, I don't really see a reason to care.
Where we rely upon androids for a lot of our service class business, or the class that serves us, that helps.
Yeah, just pretend there's water coming out of that.
Well, to be fair, Graves, you can't really simulate that kind of stuff with mocap, so.
I wonder, like, what these actors thought looking back on the finished product.
Well, that's the thing that we all wonder when it comes to David Cage.
That happens to anyone who wants to, considering how Sony does most of its product with this method of mocap, that happens to everyone.
You know, guys, I can picture it right now. Kara's actress was probably like...
Well, sure, we know what Ellen Page thinks of her experience.
Well, hang on then. Kara's fell asleep. Connor's was like, you had it bad. What the fuck did you do at the end? And what's the guy's name?
Jesse Williams. Oh, you mean Marcus?
Yeah,
it's the actor who plays
And Marcus kept punching through his TV because of how his story went.
I wouldn't blame him. I mean, from what I recall, even Willem Dafoe doesn't really look back on Beyond Two Souls that fondly.
Who does? Aside from David Cage, obviously.
It's funny, yeah, Beyond Two Souls is the one that really got there to be a big schism in the fan base, to the point where a lot of his fans actually jumped ship.
To what?
Well,
Anything else?
Until Dawn.
Tasty.
Hear the interrogation.
I think they actually made the behind-the-scenes featurette of
Yeah, they did.
of the interrogation.
Oh, look
scene
at that!
Where David Cage.
There you go. This is what happens if Hank wins the fight.
Well, what happened
go.
was David Cage, in one of his cages, instead of interrogation, he said integration.
All right, now an entire video demonstrating the
an interactive story,
the flexibility of how the story can divert.
And it can diverge.
Oh, there you go. See, this is the 20th anniversary game.
Emotion.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They literally have the word emotion with giant letters in their office.
We've already saw this in the Heavy Rain behind the scenes.
I forgot about that.
This guy is obsessed with that word. He's obsessed.
He has it a giant freaking
Maybe he needs to be secretly reminded of that every time.
Well, remember, Graves, it's kind of like how the psychiatrist.
What poor state of his office.
Oh, here you go, Adam Williams. He's one of David's co-writers for this game.
For a French person, you sound awfully British.
My God. Honestly, you look
maybe
at
he
offices,
is. Maybe he is British.
You will look at offices like Sony Santa Monica or Level 5, and you see that their offices are made, yes, with the cubicle idea in mind, but they're made comfortable for their, employers and everything. Here it's just a series of long tables where everything is stranded next to each other in the most awkward way possible.
Basically, Jova, while the British game industry is relatively fine, sometimes you might have to go a bit further abroad to get your work. Us Brits, we like to move about a lot sometimes, like how James Turner is at Game Freak, and this guy is in France at Quantic Dream.
Makes
It's
sense.
Having to deal with the crazy ideas of that guy.
It's yeah. It
Oh,
happens a
look at
lot.
that,
Oh, there
guys.
you go,
This the
experimenting the chart
intertwining
system.
story. Bad news is that most of it still sucks. The weird...
That's what I've been saying for like what, almost 10 years now.
And the sad thing is that even with Connor, eventually his story
Honestly,
goes
I
back to
think
crap.
this is one of the most aggravating cases because of how more effective the choice system actually works. So it's more wasted. You look
really
at a game
is.
like Beyond Two Souls and you're like, well, yeah, it sucks, but it's linear. Like it's just a pretense the whole choice thing.
And build that character momentarily.
Mind you, it's still bad, but yeah, Beyond Two Souls had an illusion more so of choice. Yeah, there were choices, but at the end, you pretty much get the same ending. The world is screwed and you're not getting a sequel. Whereas with this,
Well,
though...
Theo, maybe that's for what you said, Theo. Well, Theo, maybe that's why a lot of the Quantic Dream employees have been unhappy recently.
Wait.
Like especially
Oh, yeah,
considering
that's
how
true.
recently, or in more recent months,
Hold on, Theo. Notice how this guy Simon is the lead game designer. Up until before this game, the lead game designer of Quantic Dream was Carolyn Marshall. You might have seen her in the behind-the-scenes stuff that we saw in our previous commentaries. Problem is, remember, she, along with other employees of Quantic Dream, left the company to found their own company that's going to make better David Cage games, apparently, and they're working with Sega now. So, I guess. So yeah, I don't know the name of the company. Look for Carolyn Marshall, Quantic Dream, and you should be able to find who she is.
Wouldn't surprise me. From what I hear, David Cage is actually a pretty crappy business runner. Not surprised a lot of people.
Remember, she was the senior game designer. She handled everything involving the gameplay of these games, and she left the company after Beyond Two Souls. So clearly there was some rift.
Well, yeah, I forget. Wasn't there like that behind-the-scenes stuff where we figured out that a lot of stuff was contradicting each other? Yeah, I remember. All the different divisions were contradicting each other in the behind-the-scenes stuff for Beyond Two Souls, which showed, yeah, there might be some trouble in paradise. Or hell, whatever you call it.
Yeah, basically, a bunch of people at Quantic Dream actually moved up to London and made their own studio.
Yeah. Oh, so Carolyn's studio is in London? Interesting.
Yeah.
But considering how in recent months the whole discussion about crunch,
it's called Interior Nights.
crunch time and syndicates, union syndicates for gaming developers are actually more rampant. Honestly, more than anything, Quantic Dream has to get a move on unless they want to get even more trouble.
Well, wouldn't surprise me if they don't wisen up to the times, and eventually that's what ends up being their downfall. It happens to everyone eventually. People used to think EA and Activision were untouchable, and look at them now.
Is that if I shot a film, I would get to do one of these.
Oh, Brian, I really hope you get to.
As Connor, your head goes all over the place because you're trying to keep track of basically 4 different.
Brian to me is like the anti-Kellen Lutz, whereas Kellen Lutz I can't stand. Brian, I really want to see this guy succeed.
No, it's because he's genuinely charismatic, and he genuinely, he's a genuinely charismatic actor in general.
Again, the one problem is well, this is apparently supposed to be his big break, and dude, when a David Cage game is supposed to be your big break...
Well, Jova, to be fair, not only did the game sell well, the best selling of the company, so actually, but he's been interacting with the fans a lot, and he seems to be gaining fans because of this game, so it seems like he's getting noticed, at least. I mean, Final Fantasy 13 was a pile of garbage, but it was thanks to that game that Troy Baker became the star that he is now, so bad games surprisingly can be good launch careers, apparently.
Again, every low-key...
Whoa, God, that mustache.
Great mustaches.
Forget the mustache, what about the beard? Go ahead.
It's standard, these mustaches that counts. Every low-key voice actor that passes through Square Enix offices is pretty much guaranteed to find at least a bit of success in the future.
Ain't
They're
that the
apparently
truth?
that good in handling, their publicity.
Boom.
Angeline Leon.
The lead animator.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not hearing as many French accents as with other games.
Well, she already made. Sorry. Well, Jova, maybe they all left with Carolyn.
Maybe.
Remember when Caroline Marshall left? She brought with her all the French people.
But they're all in London now, so that's going to be a bit of a language barrier.
Well, if they know English, you know.
Not really, Dwebs. English is taught in schools all over the world. I'm pretty sure France is no exception.
Yeah, to the point where it's practically required in certain nations.
Well, like in England.
Well, I don't
It's
think
gonna
you
say
need to
more like Japan, but yeah.
I don't think English need to learn that language at school because they're already.
Actually,
Well,
we do have to learn it as a
language.
Yeah. Sadly, English classes are a requirement even in America.
Well, when I mean English classes, I mean language learning, like actually learning.
Oh yeah. We have separate language and literacy classes.
So let me get
we
this
have
straight.
to learn
You guys
English
need-
as a language. Yeah.
So but I don't know. I never needed that.
It's supposedly
That's because you're
just
not English.
So you got no. I mean for Portuguese too, because I never needed to be taught how to speak Portuguese because I already learned it from birth. I mean,
It's also like we have Welsh schools that only speak Welsh, and even they have to learn Welsh. So even though the students there already speak Welsh, but whatever.
So what's this video?
They even have to take their English exams in Welsh.
what was the title again?
God,
It's
I
weird.
don't remember.
How? Please buy our game.
Pretty much.
Pretty please.
Whatever. It's behind the scenes. Just listen. I don't think it's not the music yet, but
No. It's still basically how to be made, we injected life into the game.
How
From the
nice.
concept arts to the models.
Hello and welcome to how we made Detroit a bankrupt city look not bankrupt.
Well, it's not bankrupt anymore, but yeah, it has been bankrupt.
Yeah, as recently as a few years ago.
oh, I think it's all about the gameplay stuff, or maybe not.
I think it's
How
about
they
the place of
transformed,
Detroit.
they passed from the artwork to the finished product.
graphics. Okay.
I mean, imagine if London went bankrupt. It would throw the economy into a bit of a shithole, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Anticipation is more about gleaning from our contemporary reality, the one we know, because Detroit is set in 2038. And 2038.
Were those pictures from Heavy Rain? Rain?
Apparently not.
That is to say, technology becoming more and more invisible, a lot more elegant.
If it were, then I guess David Cage could officially be classified as the best recyclist in gaming.
We simply have to invent. They are in fact very technological objects.
I mean, I can see the thought process behind that. It's the future, but not that far ahead. So,
There you
Fair
go. There's
enough.
the
props for the thought process.
Yeah, that's something with David Cage games. There is a lot of good thinking put into them. The problem is again the man in charge.
Well, yeah, but again, this is always the best aspect of Quantum Dream's games. The visuals in particular of this game are really, really good. So obviously, it does warrant a video specific to it, since it's the most successful aspect of these games always.
They had to correspond to every social class, rich and poor.
Originally, we were going to have Olivia Wilde play Kara, but then we thought, nah, that's stupid. Let's just use the actress from the original short. But seriously, what the fuck was up with that concept art?
Like that, there's no confusion.
You can't do that. Why aren't you sending a real person?
Subtle, be damned.
You might as well just chant, I hate androids. Clack, 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 clack,
Look
clack.
at that, Java. Clancy Brown being
He's like, please end this already. Like, I need to get back to with Mr. Krabs.
I know, right?
Please.
Yeah. They should have probably used in one of those Clancy Brown interviews a recycled clip where Mr. Krabs likes, I don't hate children. I don't care about children. I just care about their parents' money.
We show them the design, what their image will be, and what they
So, David discussing the story with the actors and the characters in general.
So I guess we have some proof that yes, in fact, they did read the script and probably just figured they needed the money. I mean, okay, maybe this did come from a place of passion for some, but God dang the script. Well, okay, to be fair, for Connor and Hank, the script was actually good for the most part. Surprisingly.
Again, considering
Like
also,
I said, Java, I'm pretty sure I'm still convinced that Adam was the one who wrote it.
and also considering some of the scenes, from what I've seen, some of the mocap scenes from before, I'm still convinced that Clancy Brown improvised some of his lines. Like they gave him a general direction, and he decided what to do.
It really does feel like that. Oh my God, she hit him with a chicken.
4 boxes.
Well, when it comes, that's actually common in mocap. The great thing about mocap is that you can take something that's very soft and doesn't hurt and still hit it with incredible strength to simulate the proper motion of it, but you will not hurt the actor as a result. So it makes it very easy for the actors to just get into character and just do things without worrying about injuries.
You know what would actually be interesting? A video game that's about making a motion capture game, like where you're playing as the characters from the perspective of a studio and all that jazz.
Weird.
The closest thing I can think of is the character from Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance who's literally called mocap.
That's more of a joke than anything.
It's like in wrestling. It's like if you early WWF stuff, there was a director.
Maybe, technically speaking, there's that tutorial sequence at the beginning of Fahrenheit in the Prophecy.
Yeah. Hello, my name is David Cage. I'm the writer and director of Indigo Prophecy.
Was shooting a Spider-Man mo-kit.
Oh, I see. They're dubbing over some of the crew members.
Some of them are French and they can speak English, so dubbing over.
At least when you don't try to speak butchered English like David.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen David Cage ever speak French.
He does, but only when he's in France talking to French people.
But we use the Tiger plushie. Oh no!
Oh my God!
Yeah, again, I still haven't looked up Indigo Prophecy French version whether he actually does the French speaking himself.
Most likely, I mean, why not? And I'm pretty sure David Gassman probably also does the French voice of Lucas as well.
Mostly, yeah. He does.
Whereas
that,
performance will probably be a bit better since that's his.
My guess is
he has been doing voice acting for a long time, and starting kind of with Ubisoft with Raymond 2. He did voice the character both for the French and the English dub in order to save money for voice actors.
My guess, Dwebs, is whenever David brings in, whenever David Cage brings in David, he has him shoot the scenes twice. Once in English, once in French.
We use a system of facts, an identity card for each actor. The actor do a whole range of facial
expressions.
Then we recover all the expressions and paste the animations on a puppet that Jan has prepared. I then
lovely.
find these poses. I might stretch the lip, reinflate a cheek, tiny details that make the finished product really.
Well, that's the thing, Jova. All of those great character models originally started as that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is also why it's easy for more for the photo mode, because they have some leftover, facial expression, even some of the goofy over the top one, that they find a way that you can use.
In relation to the body, etc.
It was crazy when I saw the newest model for Kara, because they've been working on it, and this was the first time I literally jumped in my seat. It not only looked so much like me, it was the fact that it looked so.
The sad part is that Valerie Curry really seems really passionate about the character.
I guess, okay, she must have felt...
I can't believe her.
No, I can believe her as well. That's what makes it sad too. That's what makes it sad.
It really is sad, because Kara in this game does not get the rep she deserves. Again, there are so many...
Look at that, Dwebs. David Cage programming.
Oh wait, Luther was supposed to have hair originally.
I wasn't aware that David was capable of using a computer.
Lord knows he must be in order to be the head of a video games company.
Well, it depends, Jova. Some people hire people specifically for those purposes under their supervision.
True.
As in cinema. The real difficulty of our job is to know if these cameras are telling us something. Are they
at the end of the day, game development is a team effort, so obviously you get the best people for each specific assignment.
Most important challenge for me was one of the final scenes where Marcus
It's kind of like with Naughty Dog, Jova. Naughty Dog has both a scenario.
Responsible for the stalemate at the end.
Naughty Dog games, you always have a scenario director, aka the guy who writes and directs the of course directs the actors and shit. And as a game director, someone who handles everything involving the gameplay. But go ahead.
Yeah,
He's the one who has done that the shooting sequence with Pedro showed us.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a fun challenge.
The idea was to say we have 3 characters. We would like each of them to have a specific cinematography. We wanted Kara to be much more filmed with some kind of handheld camera, to have something.
Okay.
You wanted to have her filmed with a handheld camera.
We wanted something very cold.
Okay.
And for Marcus, we wanted.
Okay, you know what? Okay, part of me gets it. You know, different filming styles for different characters.
I just didn't saw them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't really feel that, which is a shame because I do feel a lot of other thematic differences, but when you shoot stuff on different cameras, it doesn't always really do as well.
Again, Jova, that's because David Cage is a shit director. Anyway, here's the composers.
So each would have his own world and his own style.
Now, it is rather interesting that each character has like a
let's
practically a
for the next
different
video.
team given to them.
The soundtrack of Detroit.
I don't know how to feel about the soundtrack of this game. On the one hand, there are some really good tracks. On the other hand, as a whole, it's not that memorable.
We were constantly asking at each place in the game, why are we putting music here? What is it going to say? So we focused the music on bringing emotion.
Wait, are they literally going to just read what we already wrote from the text pages?
No.
No, don't worry.
More like retell in a different way.
Also, if there's actually a scenario where Todd can survive and thus, you know, show remorse, why doesn't he...
So the soundtrack
Oh, no point in asking that.
supporting the 3 characters' very different stories. We really wanted 3 colors, 3 musical sound identities, and from there, having 3 composers made sense, since the story of Kara, Marcus, and Connor are all completely different.
Not all completely different, but different enough, I'll give you that. Since it kind of all boils down to racism is wrong!
I was about to say, they're all equally racist.
Very mechanical, very machine-esque somehow. For Kara,
Machine-esque.
moving and emotional.
Oh, David.
Identity, but it was also a journey about
What am I gonna do?
A
with
journey
you?
about love that kind of really is a circle when you get down to it. Like, they got out of the city, only to go back to the city near the end.
very fortunate to
Pedro, honestly speaking, he's too far gone. Nothing can be done.
and working with them.
Okay, in that case, David, I disown you. You're no son of mine anymore.
Just pointing out Motomo Toriyama is.
Oh, look at that, Joe. Oh, look at that, Dwibs. Abbey Road Studios was used, so,
That's used for scoring sessions.
Not just that, but it was
around here.
not just that, but it was also the English Session Orchestra. So, so pretty much, we have once again Dwibs' country to thank for the musical performances.
Hey, you were saying, T?
Just saying, David, Motomo Toriyama has managed to do at least a decent game minimum in the meantime. What's your excuse?
Heck, you know...
His excuse is his ego, Tio.
Oh, man.
Remember, Teo, there's the in the psychiatrist's room in Heavy Rain. There's a giant sign with the word ego. So that's it's right there. That's your answer right there.
That is kind of a thing. If Motomo Toriyama...
I'm guessing this is a cello.
Yeah, it looks old enough.
It looks big enough, too.
Seemed to fit over the top, which is taking Kara's name, Kara, and just using like a 2-syllable motif, and it sounds like this.
I actually like Kara's main theme. That he's
playing it now.
Again, their means of putting together the music is pretty keen. It's just the soundtrack doesn't feel that memorable to me for some reason.
The problem is that
music making's when they do these video game documentaries. Music making is always my favourite part. One of my favourite ones was watching how Stuart Copeland put together a track for Spyro 1.
That's the thing, Jova. I think the issue is that while they're doing a great job experimenting and doing a lot of cool stuff with it, aside from the main themes themselves, I genuinely think that these composers don't have that much to work with. I mean, it's just racism.
I think it also falls into the pit trap that a lot of movie soundtracks fall into, the fact that these are tracks specifically made for every scenario, and just that scenario. In the sense like, well, yeah, I mean, it provides background music for the scene, but it's not something you'd want to go back and listen to necessarily. Compare this to, say, something like the Avengers theme, or Black Panther's score, or Captain America First Avengers score, which has memorable tracks, mind you, multiple memorable tracks that you want to come back and listen to.
And that's it's funny you mentioned that, Joe, considering the MCU had a bit of a scoring problem for the longest time.
Oh yeah, funnily enough, it was actually thanks to a YouTube video that they actually cleaned up their act.
Yeah, apparently Mark Mothersbaugh, who did the score for Thor Ragnarok, took notice of that video and said, okay, I agree that a lot of MCU scores are rather samey, so fuck it, I'll make my own very unique.
It's to use a more appropriate comparison, I still would argue that Souls is a more memorable one, because the soundtrack in Beyond Two Souls, while having technically less variety, as we've already demonstrated by the incredible experimentation. There you go. See, this is as demonstrated. While it is true that the Beyond Two Souls soundtrack is a more traditional, just orchestral soundtrack, unlike this one, which is much more experimental and deals with a lot of instruments and synthesizers and all. I would argue that soundtrack still stands out more, at least to me, because the melodies overall is just more memorable. I genuinely really love Jodie's theme in particular.
I'm guessing experimental music is this composer's thing in particular.
To give you an idea, like I cannot hum any of the tracks. I like listening to them in the game, but when it comes to actually trying to hum them from memory, I can't. But when it comes to Jodie's theme, na, 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 I can hum it because it's just that memorable to me. It's one of those cases where, at the end of the day, it's cool that you experiment, but if you can't put up a memorable melody that sticks with the viewer, it just ends up being a waste of effort in general.
Let me put it like this. Be memorable first and experimental second. A good example is Ace Attorney 6, where they do experiment, yes, but it's smart they're putting a variation on a formula that they know will work. Or, for example, when they literally sync up the music to text boxes for a certain testimony. That's experimental, but again, it works, and because of that, is very memorable for it. This, it feels like they were wanted to be experimental first, and yeah, I get it. Props to you for being experimental. But I never really hear them say if they ever... Well, okay, they probably did listen to it along with it.
Well, to be fair, they did say in the text stuff that we read that they were generally trying to convey all the emotions of the story and stuff. The problem is that, like I said, they had little to work with because the emotions of the story just rely on racism is wrong, and that's it. There's just nothing else to it.
I mean, sure, they may tell you otherwise, but when you get down to it, that's really all the free stories are about. It's because of racism that Kara has her troubles. It's because of racism that Connor has his troubles here and there, and is sort of tasked to find Jericho. It's because of racism that everything in Marcus's story happens.
Yeah. And again, and like you said, I guess to be fair, yeah, I guess you can argue that yes, these composers maybe lost a bit, like they lost sight of they couldn't see the forest through the trees. I guess like it's just they really lost focus when it comes to what they were doing.
I won't even say that they lost focus.
Case didn't exactly give them a whole lot of direction.
But that's what I said. They didn't have much to work with.
Yeah.
Fortunately, John Paisano made a much better score for Marvel Spider-Man, if you ask me. But what I was gonna say, when God, what's his name again? Hans Zimmer's pupil.
Lorne Balfe.
That's it. When Lorne Balfe did the score for Beyond Two Souls with Hans Zimmer supervising, he stuck to an orchestra and a choir. You know, that's it, nothing else. While technically limiting compared to something like this, he worked on just crafting one and perfecting one thing instead of trying to do so many different things at the same time, and basically trying to be a jack of all trades but a master of none.
Oh, Berlin
John
No, the
Paisano.
Berlin Orchestra. Cool.
Yeah, John Paisano's video game composing has got him into a rather mixed track record with games. Because on one hand, he did some music for Gran Turismo Sport of all games, funnily enough. Earlier that year.
So it's a composer that Sony usually goes to, apparently.
Earlier that year in 2017, he did the score for Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh.
Then this game, and then Spider-Man. He also did music for stuff like DreamWorks Dragons, Daredevil, The Defenders, and a few films as well, like the Maze Runner films, and even Superman / Batman Apocalypse.
Music is there, but it's subliminal. Are feeling it, and it's
My name is Marcus. Yes.
My name is Marcus. This is my story.
Just to make sure you don't get confused. This is actually my story, not some other guy's story. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
God, it's spreading.
Well, the conductor was really into it, getting into it.
Well,
At least
yeah.
someone was.
They have to be over the top with the gesture like that.
Well, I know, but his arms were moving at supersonic speed for a second there.
Imagine if he accidentally just flunk his bat and then it hit somebody.
That has happened sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe they should all do. Maybe they should all do what Leopold Stokowski did and just conduct with just his hands.
It's possible, but it's not as easy as it looks.
It's basically hard mode because the orchestra needs to interpret that.
Leopold.
And that,
But I
ladies
think,
and gentlemen, was.
But I think when it
All
comes
right, we've
to
already
music,
saw the shorts before we even commented on the game itself, so we're gonna skip them.
But I think also the problem with the music here is also how it's associated with that. It's similar to when I think about it, A Dark Void, when we did previously even this. But it has the composer of Battlestar Galactica and more recently God of War 2018 and Godzilla King of Monster, which has a goat tier score. Please go listen to it. but in Dark Void, he's very memorable despite him doing his own shtick. So I'm guessing it's because also due to the overall quality of the game. If the score needs to play a supportive role after all, it cannot carry alone the entire game.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes, yes, obviously, it's kind of like, okay, it's kind of works like with actors, because there are actors who, of course, are stuck in a shitty movie with a shit script, so obviously they're going to have a really hard time trying to, make their performances work, because their script just gives them nothing to work with. Whereas it kind of works the same way, but at the same time, there are actors who are just that good and can even elevate a script, like the voice cast of Fair Van Seraph, or the voice cast of Total-Trek, because those two games have voice casts that are way beneath the games are beneath these actors, but they tried their fucking hardest to sell the game. So sometimes it can work. With composers, it's the same thing. Sometimes a composer can be just so good that he manages to deliver a fantastic score, like with Beyond Two Souls or other movies. There are plenty of movies out there that are crap, but that have good scores. I guess it depends on the situation. Sometimes a composer, like I remember one thing Joe Hisaishi said in the Ni no Kuni behind the scenes stuff, that when he wrote the score for Ni no Kuni 1, he was feeling particularly inspired, like more than usual. Sometimes the composer would have like a really good moment where he's, oh my god, I feel so inspired today.
Yeah. And regardless of the argument about video games being art, composing in general, regardless of what you do, is in itself a form of art. Therefore, it involves also inspiration and talent on its own. You may be inspired, and sometimes instead you may be following a checklist. That's what happens. But anyway, I guess that's it for Detroit.
That's it for Detroit, everybody.
Finally.
If you want to check a different interpretation of this game, like we mentioned, check when Shiri was enslaved in playing this game on her own PlayStation 4. Bless her soul.
Enslaved is the right word, yes.
Or you cannot.
Speaking of which, while we have to egregiously, I guess, wait whatever David Cage is going to be cooking up next, thankfully not anymore, wasting Sony's money, at least not directly. We'll see eventually when instead we enslave Jova for his own PS4 for Beyond Two Souls.
Yes, basically, obviously everybody, of all the David Cage games, the Beyond is the one that Jova hates the most, so obviously that's the one I'm going to have him play.
Of course. The
I
first
actually
David
haven't
Cage.
showed up for that yet, so might as well give my opinion on it.
Hey, what the heck? Why don't we rope Tio in for the whole ride while we're at it?
Sorry, Joe, I already have my share of pain with Heavy Rain, and I don't want to go back into the void with Flying Police.
We'll see about that.
Well, Joe, but think of it like this. Dwebs went through Indigo Prophecy, Teo went for Heavy Rain, Shira went for Detroit. It's only fair that you also have to endure the other one that's left.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I was just saying, why doesn't Tio stick around to watch?
Oh, no, I'm gonna, Jova, like I said.
No, he's gonna watch. He's gonna watch.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, Jova, you want a co-op playthrough where Teo can be Aiden and you will be Jody.
That is very tempting.
Teo's already suffered. Come on now.
And at some point, I'm taking on the burden of Omnicron all by myself.
Yeah, there's that too, as well.
But anyway, we dragged this long enough, so see you eventually for that Beyond and whatever David Cage masterful mind thinks.
Well, it's gonna be like at the very least 4 years before we get that game, Teo. So at this point, we're just basically on vacation from David Cage, apparently.
Anyway, we have to halt this wild ride.
See you, everybody.
See ya.
Ciao.